It had been 30,000 years since the aliens left Earth. For them, time passed differently, but they had never forgotten their visit to this planet. Their mission back then was simple: observe the humans, collect data, and leave without changing anything. But now, after thousands of years, the time had come to return. The aliens were eager to see the progress of the species they once encountered. The enormous spacecraft, called Zelnor, appeared from the darkness of space, its sleek metallic surface glinting as it neared Earth's atmosphere. The ship's bright lights illuminated the sky, casting a surreal glow on the clouds below. Inside the ship, the crew of aliens, beings with long, slender bodies, shimmering skin, and large, reflective eyes, prepared for their descent. They had studied Earth from a distance for years, but nothing could compare to the moment they would touch down once again. As the Zelnor entered Earth's atmosphere, the commander, Zethar, stood at the control center, his heart beating faster than usual. His species had never been to Earth in such a long time. They had seen the images of the planet's surface, but there was always a sense of mystery surrounding it. What had changed in the last 30,000 years? Was Earth still the same as they had left it? Or had it evolved beyond recognition? Steady. Zethar's voice was calm but filled with anticipation. The other crew members watched the monitors carefully, awaiting any signs of trouble. The ship passed through the atmosphere with ease, and the ground below came into focus. The view was breathtaking. Lush forests stretched far across the land. Sparkling oceans lay to the west, and towering mountains greeted them in the distance. It was a beautiful sight, just like it had been all those years ago. But something felt different. The ship descended slowly, and the familiar landmarks they had once seen through their own eyes were nowhere to be found. "Where is it?" muttered Jorath, one of the crew members, as he scanned the area outside the ship's windows. This isn't the place we left our ship." Zethar's eyes narrowed. He had been expecting this. They had left their massive vessel, designed for exploration and survival, at a specific location all those years ago. But now, there was nothing. No ship, no signs of their landing. The ground was unfamiliar. This was not where they had intended to land. The Zelnor slowly came to a halt in the air above what seemed like a large open plain. The planet's surface stretched endlessly, with no sign of the ship they had once parked here. Zethar's mind raced. Could the humans have found their ship? Did they use it? What had happened to the ship they left behind? "Scan the area," Zethar commanded, his voice steady but filled with concern. "I want to know exactly what's happening on the ground." A team of crew members worked quickly, activating the ship's advanced scanning systems. They sent pulses of energy down to the planet's surface, trying to map out any structures or disturbances. As the data poured in, a strange realization began to settle in. There was nothing. No remnants of their ship, no structures they recognized. It was as if their presence on Earth had been erased. The tension in the air was palpable. They had come here to reconnect with Earth, to see how much the planet had changed. But now they were beginning to question whether they had made a mistake. Had they miscalculated? Was their ship lost forever? And if so, why hadn't anyone come to greet them? Zethar clenched his fists. "Prepare the team for a landing. We need to find out what happened here." He stood tall, his mind still racing. Something was wrong and he needed answers. The aliens had traveled a long distance, but they had not expected this. What had Earth become in the last 30,000 years? As the Zelnor slowly began its descent towards the Earth's surface, Zethar's thoughts lingered on one troubling question. If the ship was gone, could the humans have evolved beyond anything the aliens had ever imagined? Could Earth's inhabitants be more advanced than they were when they left? The sound of the ship's engines humming filled the air as they touched down. The crew members prepared to disembark, but none of them spoke. The atmosphere inside the ship was tense, every member of the crew wondering the same thing. What was waiting for them outside? As the doors to the ship opened, a wave of cold air swept inside. The ground below them was dry, covered in dust. The sky was clear, with only a few clouds drifting lazily overhead. There were no signs of life. No animals, no people, no sounds. The aliens stepped outside, their eyes scanning the landscape for any clues about what had happened to their lost ship. Suddenly, one of the crew members, Jorath, pointed to something in the distance. "Look," he shouted. "Is that a city?" Far off in the distance, a massive structure appeared. It was unlike anything they had seen before, sleek and futuristic, with buildings stretching high into the sky. It was a city, but it wasn't the kind of city they had expected. There were no signs of ancient ruins or old civilizations. This city was alive, modern, and seemingly untouched. Sethar's eyes widened. This isn't what we were expecting. The story of Earth's past was far from over. The search began immediately after the aliens realized their ship was missing. The crew gathered in the command center, their minds racing with questions. Zethar stood tall at the front, trying to keep his composure despite the growing sense of urgency. The atmosphere inside the ship felt heavy, tense. What could have happened to their vessel? How could something so massive just disappear without a trace? "Prepare for an extended scan," Zethar ordered, his voice calm but filled with determination. "We need to understand what's happening on this planet. Let's gather as much information as we can." The crew quickly got to work, activating the ship's advanced scanning systems. Pulses of energy shot down from the ship, mapping out the surface of the Earth. The data began to pour in, each scan offering a new glimpse of the world below. As the scans processed, a strange feeling settled in. They were seeing the planet in ways they hadn't anticipated. Human civilization had not just survived, it had thrived. Zethar leaned forward, studying the readouts. The planet's surface was dotted with clusters of cities. Some were massive, stretching over hundreds of kilometers with towering buildings made of glass and metal. Others were smaller, more humble, but each appeared to be carefully planned, advanced in ways that no one could have predicted. "It's incredible," whispered Jorath, one of the crew members. "How could they have built this? They were primitive when we left." Zethar's eyes narrowed. The aliens had only ever encountered small, scattered human settlements during their first visit. But now, it was clear that humans had advanced far beyond what the aliens had expected. This wasn't just survival. This was a completely new civilization. "Send down a probe," Zethar instructed, his tone growing more serious. "I want to know what we're dealing with. We need to learn as much as we can." The crew launched a small, unnoticeable probe from the ship. It silently descended through the air, skimming over the landscape. The probe's sensors gathered information, taking images and analyzing the structures below. As it moved closer to one of the cities, the crew noticed something strange. The buildings were unlike anything they had ever seen before. There were no signs of decay, no ancient structures. These were brand new, shining with the light of progress. What is that?" One of the crew members muttered in disbelief. "These buildings, they're not just made of stone or wood. This is advanced technology." As the probe sent back data, the aliens realized that this wasn't just a city. It was something else, something far more advanced. The buildings had strange, shimmering surfaces, almost as if they were alive, moving in ways that were impossible to explain. The technology humans had developed wasn't just about survival. It was about something much more profound. Zethar could hardly believe his eyes. The humans had done the unthinkable. They had not only survived the passage of time, they had mastered it. There were energy sources in the city that seemed to defy all logic, power sources that were clean and efficient, yet appeared to be beyond their understanding. "Send a team down," Zethar said firmly, his mind made up. "We need to see this for ourselves. The sooner we understand what's happened, the better." The crew prepared to leave the safety of their ship. They donned their gear and made their way to the airlock. As they stepped out onto Earth's surface, they could feel the weight of history pressing down on them. The ground was solid beneath their feet, but the air felt different, charged with an energy they couldn't quite explain. Zethar looked around, his gaze sweeping across the vast landscape. They were no longer the explorers they once were. Now they were the ones seeking answers. They had come back to Earth expecting to find a planet much like the one they had left behind, but what they were seeing was far beyond their expectations. The crew began their journey toward the nearest city, but with every step they felt more and more like outsiders. The Earth they had once known seemed like a distant memory, replaced by a world that was at once alien and yet strangely familiar. The technology they saw around them was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was as if the humans had somehow taken the knowledge of the past and built something entirely new, something that was beyond their understanding. As they neared the city, the crew members exchanged uneasy glances. There was a feeling in the air, a sense of being watched. But who was watching them? Who controlled this new world? And what had happened to the humans who had once been so small, so weak? The questions piled up and the answers seemed further and further away. Finally, they reached the outskirts of the city. Towering structures stood before them, shining under the sunlight. The air was filled with a strange hum, almost like the city itself was alive. They had arrived at the heart of this new world, and they knew that what they would find here would change everything. Zethar took a deep breath, his mind racing. We need to go inside. It's time we learn what's really going on here. As the team stepped forward, they could feel the weight of history pressing down on them. The world they were about to enter wasn't the one they remembered, and whatever lay ahead, it would change everything. The deeper they ventured into the strange, thriving city, the more the crew felt as though they were walking through a dream. The towering buildings around them shimmered in the sunlight, their surfaces alive with strange, pulsating patterns. Nothing about this place was familiar. It was a world that had completely transformed, and the aliens were no longer the visitors. They were the ones who felt out of place. Zethar kept his eyes on the surroundings, every corner revealing something new and unexpected. There were no traditional roads, no signs of old-world architecture. Instead, the streets seemed to flow like liquid, curved and winding with smooth surfaces that appeared to change color depending on the angle of the light. The air itself was thick with a strange energy, almost electric, humming with life. "Can you feel that?" Jorith asked, his voice low, almost awed. "This place, it's not like anything we've seen before. The atmosphere is different, as if it's alive." Zethar nodded, his thoughts racing. The Earth they had left behind was now a distant memory. The humans had not only survived, they had thrived, evolving in ways the aliens could never have anticipated. There was no sign of the primitive species they once encountered. This was a new world entirely. As the crew continued their journey, they noticed something strange. Despite the futuristic city surrounding them, there were no signs of human life. There were no people in the streets, no sounds of chatter or movement. The city felt eerily empty, as if it had been abandoned. Or maybe it was waiting for something. But who or what was it waiting for? The crew members exchanged uneasy glances. Jorith looked at Zethar, his face filled with confusion. "Why aren't there any humans? We should be seeing them by now." Zethar's brow furrowed as he took in the silence. The technology they had encountered was nothing short of extraordinary. Buildings and structures seemed to grow organically, as if they had been formed by a force beyond their understanding. But the absence of life was unsettling. Where were the humans who had created all this? Just as the crew was about to question the oddity of the situation further, a sudden noise broke the silence. It wasn't a loud noise, but a subtle hum, like the soft whirring of machinery. The aliens stopped in their tracks, their senses on high alert. The hum seemed to come from deep within the city, from the very heart of the towering structures. "We need to investigate," Zethar said, his voice steady. He gestured for the crew to follow him. They moved swiftly through the streets, guided by the mysterious hum, drawn toward its source. The hum led them to a massive structure, unlike any they had seen before. It was a tower reaching far into the sky, its surface smooth and reflective. It seemed to pulse with energy, radiating warmth that filled the air with an almost magnetic pull. As they approached the tower's base, they saw something that made their hearts race. A small door, barely noticeable, opened before them as if it had been waiting for them to arrive. The crew hesitated for a moment, exchanging wary glances. This was too strange, too unnatural. But the pull of curiosity was too strong. They couldn't turn back now. Without a word, Zethar stepped forward, leading the way inside. The door slid open silently, revealing a narrow corridor that seemed to stretch endlessly ahead. The walls were made of a shimmering, translucent material, glowing faintly in the dim light. The further they went, the more the air felt thick with energy. The hum was louder now, vibrating in the walls around them. They reached the end of the corridor where another door awaited them. This one was massive, its surface etched with intricate symbols that seemed to move and shift before their eyes. Zethar placed his hand on the door and it opened with a soft, almost welcoming sound. Inside, they found themselves standing in a large chamber. At the center of the room, a pedestal stood, surrounded by strange glowing symbols. The hum was, now deafening, vibrating through the very floor beneath their feet. On the pedestal lay a small object, barely visible through the haze of light surrounding it. "What is that?" Jorath whispered, unable to take his eyes off the object. It was small, spherical, and seemed to pulse with an energy all its own. Zethar's mind raced. This object, this device, was unlike anything they had ever seen before. It wasn't just advanced technology. It felt ancient, as if it held the knowledge of an entire civilization. Without a word, Zethar approached the pedestal. As his hand hovered over the sphere, a soft voice echoed in his mind like a whisper from the very depths of time. "You have returned." The voice was clear, yet unearthly. It was both familiar and alien, as though it was calling out specifically to the aliens who had once visited this world. Zethar recoiled for a moment, startled by the sudden communication. Was this some form of ancient AI? Or was this something much older? The voice continued, its tone both calming and urgent. "We have been waiting. The time has come. The Earth you once knew no longer exists. You must understand what has happened. The balance has shifted." Zethar's mind spun as the meaning of the message began to sink in. The humans, they hadn't just built a new civilization. They had unlocked something far deeper, something far older than they could ever have imagined. And this object, this mysterious sphere, was the key to understanding it. The voice spoke once more, louder now. "This is your journey, your reckoning. The Earth has changed, but so have you. You must decide if you are ready to face what comes next." Zethar looked at his crew, the weight of the message pressing down on him. The answers they had sought were now in front of them, but the path ahead was uncertain, filled with questions and dangers they could not yet comprehend. The crew stood frozen, aware that whatever came next would change everything. The chamber was filled with a strange energy, the very air around them seeming to hum with a power they couldn't comprehend. The object on the pedestal, no longer just a mysterious sphere, but something far more profound, glowed brightly, almost beckoning them. It wasn't just advanced technology. It felt like an ancient force waiting to awaken. Zethar stood still, his gaze locked on the sphere. The voice that had spoken in his mind echoed again, reverberating inside his skull. It wasn't just a message. It was a challenge, a call to action. "Are we ready for this?" Jorath whispered, his voice shaking slightly. He couldn't hide his anxiety. The tension in the air was unbearable, as if the entire planet was holding its breath, waiting for them to make the next move. Zethar didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped forward, his hand hovering above the pedestal. The air seemed to thicken with each step, as if the room itself was testing his resolve. The soft, almost imperceptible hum that had filled the chamber grew louder, vibrating beneath his feet. Then, as though it had been expecting him, the sphere moved. It was subtle at first, just a slight shift, but then it floated upward, slowly, rising from its pedestal as if it had a life of its own. The crew stepped back, their eyes wide with disbelief. The sphere didn't just move, it seemed to pulse in time with their hearts, growing brighter and brighter, casting strange, shifting shadows across the chamber. "Zethar, what is happening?" Jorath asked, his voice trembling. Zethar's mind raced as he tried to process the scene unfolding before him. The sphere wasn't just some relic of the past. It was a key, a key to unlocking something much deeper. But what exactly? The voice echoed again, this time filling the chamber, surrounding them with its presence. This is the heart of Earth. The balance must be restored. It is time to awaken the old ones. Only then can the world be saved. The words sent a chill down Zethar's spine. The old ones. Had the humans somehow uncovered the secrets of an ancient civilization? Was this what they had built all of this for? To awaken beings older than time itself? Jorath's voice broke through Zethar's thoughts. The old ones, who are they and what does that mean for us? Zethar felt a sense of urgency growing inside him. They had come here to learn, to find answers about what had happened to Earth. But the answers were more than they ever could have anticipated. These humans, who had once been so primitive, had unearthed something far beyond anything the aliens had imagined. The voice spoke again, more forcefully now. Your journey is not over. The heart of Earth is but the beginning. The old powers lie dormant, but they are not gone. Only by understanding the past can you secure the future. You must. Choose wisely. Your fate is intertwined with ours. Zethar stepped back, his heart pounding. What had he gotten them into? Every step they took seemed to draw them further from the world they had known, and into a place where the rules of reality no longer seemed to apply. Is this what we were meant to find? Jorath asked, his voice barely a whisper. Is this why we came back? Zethar didn't answer immediately. His mind was racing. The humans had somehow connected with something ancient, something far beyond their understanding. The knowledge they had unlocked could change everything. But how could they trust it? What if they were unleashing something far darker than they realized? We need to understand more, Zethar finally said, his voice firm. This isn't just about us anymore. This is about the Earth and the future of everything on it. As the crew members exchanged uncertain looks, Zethar reached out and touched the glowing sphere. The moment his fingers made contact, a flood of images and sensations overwhelmed him. He saw ancient civilizations, ones older than time itself, rising and falling. He felt the pulse of the Earth beneath him, the heartbeat of the planet itself. The sphere seemed to respond, feeding Zethar visions of a forgotten past. He saw the rise of humanity, the moment they had first touched the stars, the moment they had begun to unlock the secrets of the universe. But there were darker images too, visions of a time when the Earth had been in balance, and then a time when it had been thrown into chaos. A great war, the conflict of powers beyond the human understanding. Zethar! Jorath's voice broke through the haze of visions, snapping him back to reality. What's happening? What did you see? Zethar staggered back, his heart racing. He could still feel the weight of the visions pressing down on him. The ancient powers were real. They had been waiting for someone with the knowledge and strength to bring balance back to the Earth. Something has gone wrong, Zethar said, his voice shaking. The Earth was thrown off balance long ago. The humans, they've awakened something. The old ones, they were supposed to stay dormant, but now they're calling us. Jorath's eyes widened. What does that mean for us, for the humans? Zethar took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. The answers were there, but they were elusive. What had they unlocked? And how could they stop the forces they had just awakened? The room seemed to close in on them, the hum of energy growing louder. The Earth was speaking to them, but Zethar wasn't sure if it was asking for help, or if it was warning them. We have to find out more, Zethar said, his voice filled with resolve. There's more to this than we understand. We can't let it fall into the wrong hands, not now. As the crew stood in the heart of this strange ancient world, they realized that their journey had only just begun. The path ahead was shrouded in mystery, and the stakes had never been higher. Would they be able to restore balance to the Earth, or would they become pawns in a game far beyond their comprehension? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. Their return to Earth had set something in motion, something that could change everything. And they were the ones who would have to face the consequences. The crew stood in silence. the weight of what they had uncovered pressing down on them. They had come to Earth seeking answers, but what they had found was far more complex than they could have imagined. The planet, once a place of simplicity, was now a world of ancient power and untold secrets. Zethar looked around at his team, their faces filled with uncertainty. They had all felt the pull of the sphere, the strange energy that seemed to call to them, urging them to move forward. But now that they had uncovered so much, the reality of their situation had set in. "What do we do now?" Jorath asked, his voice quiet but filled with a sense of urgency. "We can't just walk away from this. There's something far bigger happening here." Zethar nodded, the gravity of the moment settling in. "We can't go back to the way things were. The Earth we knew is gone, and what's left is something new, something we're not prepared for." The chamber, with its glowing walls and pulsing energy, seemed to close in on them. Every corner felt alive, watching them. Zethar's mind raced, with questions. What had the humans discovered? How had they tapped into forces that even the most advanced alien races hadn't understood? There was something else too, a sense that they were not alone. The Earth had changed, yes, but it felt like something had been awakened. Something older than the humans, something that had been waiting. "We need to learn more," Zethar said, his voice filled with determination. "This is just the beginning. Whatever is happening here, we need to understand it before it's too late." He turned to the team, his gaze steady. "We've been given a glimpse into a world that's far beyond anything we imagined. But this is only the start. We need to find the answers, and we need to do it now." The crew exchanged glances, each one silently weighing the risks. The city around them had been silent up until now, but something in the air had shifted. The hum they had heard earlier was now a constant presence, a low vibration that seemed to come from the very ground beneath their feet. "We can feel it," Jorath said, as if reading Zethar's thoughts. "The planet is alive, like it's waiting for something. And whatever it is, we're not the only ones here." Zethar turned his attention back to the pedestal. The sphere that had once seemed like a simple object now felt like a beacon, a lighthouse guiding them deeper into the unknown. But the questions it raised were more than they could solve alone. They needed help, someone who understood what had happened to Earth, someone who could explain the power the humans had unlocked. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the chamber. It was barely audible at first, but it grew louder with each passing second. The walls vibrated with the sound, and the floor beneath their feet seemed to tremble. The crew instinctively moved closer to one another, each of them bracing for whatever was to come. And then, from deep within the heart of the city, a figure appeared. It was not human. It wasn't even alien. At least not in the way they had come to understand. The figure seemed to shimmer in the light, its form shifting and pulsating, as if it was made of light itself. It was tall, almost impossibly so, and its features were both familiar and alien at the same time. Its eyes, if they could be called eyes, glowed with a brilliant light, and its presence felt both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The figure stepped forward, its movements smooth and fluid, as though it was one with the energy of the planet itself. The air around it seemed to distort, as though reality itself was bending in its presence. Zethar took a cautious step back, his instincts telling him that this was not a friendly encounter. The figure's gaze fell upon them, and though it had no discernible facial features, Zethar could feel its eyes on him, as though it was peering into the very depths of his soul. "You have awakened the heart," the figure said, its voice echoing in Zethar's mind. It wasn't a voice they could hear with their ears, it was a voice they could feel, deep within their bones. It was both soft and overpowering at once, a mio whisper and a command. "The Earth has changed," the figure continued, its tone heavy with meaning. "And with it you have awakened forces that have long been dormant. You have no idea what you have unleashed." Jorath stepped forward, his voice trembling. "What are you? What do you want with us?" The figure did not answer directly. Instead, it seemed to examine them, its glowing eyes shifting, almost as if it were contemplating how best to respond. I am the guardian of the heart, it finally said. And I have been waiting for your return. The humans have unlocked the ancient power, but they do not understand its true nature. Either do you. Zethar's heart raced. The guardian, whatever it was older than anything they had ever encountered. It wasn't a creature of flesh and blood, but something far more ancient. Its presence was as overwhelming as the energy surrounding them, and the crew couldn't help but feel that they were standing on the edge of something much larger than themselves. What happens now? Zethar asked, his voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside him. The guardian's gaze seemed to pierce through him. Now, it said, its voice like a storm, the Earth's true test begins. You have come for answers. But what you find may not be what you expect. The future is not certain, and what you choose next will decide the fate of this world and all that dwell upon it. The crew stood in stunned silence. The room was alive with energy, and every moment felt like a breath before the plunge into the unknown. Whatever path they chose now, there was no turning back. They had unlocked something much greater than they realized, and now they had to face the consequences of their actions. The guardian's voice echoed one final time. The time has come. Your journey is only just beginning. The Earth awaits your decision. As the figure faded into the light, the crew was left with more questions than answers. The heart had been awakened. The Earth had changed. And now it was up to them to decide what would happen next. Would they embrace the ancient power they had uncovered, or would they risk everything to stop what had already begun? The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Whatever happened next, it would change the Earth forever. The silence that followed the Guardian's departure was thick, almost suffocating. The crew stood in a stunned daze, their minds trying to process the gravity of what had just occurred. Zethar could feel his pulse racing, each beat echoing in his ears. It was as if time itself had slowed down, each second stretching into infinity. The chamber still hummed with energy, but it felt different now, charged with anticipation, with something they couldn't yet understand. What just happened? Joreth asked, his voice a whisper. His eyes were wide with a mix of awe and fear, but beneath it all there was a spark of something else. Curiosity, hope, maybe even the desire to unravel the mystery that had just been thrust upon them. Zethar couldn't answer. The Guardian's words rang in his mind. The Earth has changed, and with it, you have awakened forces that have long been dormant. What had they truly uncovered? Was the Earth merely a sleeping giant, waiting to be reawakened? Or was it something far darker that they had stirred? The hum in the air was getting louder now, a steady pulse that seemed to vibrate within their bones. It wasn't a normal sound, it was like the very heartbeat of the Earth itself. Every moment they spent here, the energy around them seemed to grow stronger, more palpable. We can't just stand here, Zethar finally said, his voice cutting through the thick silence. We need to find out what this all means. We need to know what we're up against. But what if we're in over our heads? Joreth's words were hesitant, but there was a lingering sense of resolve in them. What if this power is beyond us, beyond even the humans? Zethar turned to face him, his expression hardening. We don't have a choice. The Guardian said it himself. We're part of something much bigger now, and if we don't act, who will? The crew exchanged uncertain looks. It was one thing to stumble upon a hidden secret of the universe, but now that they had uncovered something so ancient, so powerful, they had no idea how to wield it, much less control it. I still don't understand, said Kieran, one of the crew members who had remained quiet until now. What exactly are we supposed to do? The Earth, it's alive, it's connected to something beyond our comprehension. But what does that mean for us? What happens next? Zethar turned to face him, his thoughts already racing ahead. The Guardian said the Earth's true test begins now. But the question is, do we wait and see what unfolds, or do we take action to understand it? Whatever is coming, we have to be ready. A low, steady vibration suddenly surged through the room, almost as if the Earth itself had heard Zethar's words. The ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble with a renewed urgency, and the walls around them pulsed brighter. It was as though the chamber was responding to their conversation, reacting to their decisions like a living being listening for their next move. "We can't wait," Zethar said with newfound determination. "We've already stirred something that won't let us walk away." At that moment, something remarkable happened. The pedestal which had once held the mysterious sphere began to glow faintly. But this time, the glow wasn't just the usual shimmer. It was different. It radiated warmth, as though it were reaching out to them, inviting them closer. And, from within the light, a symbol began to appear, carved into the very stone of the pedestal. It was an ancient sigil, one that none of them had ever seen before. But it felt strangely familiar. It seemed to shift as if it was alive, morphing and transforming, almost like it was trying to communicate with them. This wasn't here before," Jorath said, stepping closer, his voice filled with wonder. Zethar examined the sigil, feeling an almost magnetic pull toward it. He didn't know why, but it felt like the key to understanding everything. "This symbol, it's a map. A guide, maybe." The chamber seemed to grow colder, and the glow from the pedestal grew stronger. The symbol on the pedestal began to ripple, and then slowly it began to move, tracing lines that spiraled outward, creating a path. "Where does this lead?" Kieran asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zethar stepped forward, feeling an overwhelming sense of clarity. This was the next step. Whatever the symbol meant, it was guiding them, urging them to follow. "It's telling us where to go next." Before anyone could say another word, a soft, echoing voice filled the chamber once again. It wasn't the guardian this time, but a new presence, something older yet still distant, like the voice of the earth itself. "The path you follow will lead you to the answers you seek, but be warned. Every step you take will alter the world around you. The balance is fragile, and once set in motion, the events to come cannot be undone." The words hung in the air, and with them, an undeniable truth began to form in Zethar's mind. They were on the brink of something monumental, something that could reshape the course of the universe. But at what cost? "We have to move forward," Zethar said quietly. "We've already awakened forces that can't be ignored. We must face what comes, no matter the cost." As the crew watched the sigil continue to shift, a deep sense of urgency filled the room. They had no choice but to follow the path before them. Every fiber of their being urged them onward, driven by the mystery of what lay ahead. And yet, despite the determination burning in their hearts, they all felt the weight of the choice they were about to make. There was no turning back. They had uncovered something too vast, too dangerous, and now the true test would begin. Would they be able to face the forces they had unleashed? Would they be able to restore balance? Or would they become part of a much larger story, one that they couldn't control? Time would tell.